All right, let's dive into this masterpiece, huh?
Yeah.
Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Yeah.
We've got some really, really great material to work with here.
Yeah.
Focusing on a film critique goes into, all the good stuff,
Mhm.
the plot, the characters, the themes, that legacy, the film's lasting legacy.
Mm.
We know it's based on the Stephen King novel.
Right.
But Kubrick, kind of he does his own thing a little bit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Creates a really interesting world of ambiguity and subtext and, layers and layers of intrigue.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how he takes that, familiar haunted hotel concept, but then really turns it into something much more psychologically disturbing.
Right.
Rather than relying on jump scares and gore.
Right.
He gets under your skin with this atmosphere, with this pacing, and just those iconic visuals that just really stick with you.
Yeah, and those visuals, speaking of, one of the things that really jumped out at me from the source material was how Kubrick uses the Overlook Hotel
Right.
itself as a character, like almost the true antagonist of the film.
Yeah.
And that production design. Phenomenal, right?
Absolutely.
Those long symmetrical hallways, the bizarre carpet patterns, that unsettling gold room.
Oh, yeah.
It all just feeds into this sense of unease and just complete disorientation.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like a labyrinth designed to trap you, to disorient you.
Right.
And it's really interesting that, some critics have interpreted that as almost a reflection of Jack Torrance's mental state, right?
Right.
Like as he descends further into madness, it's like the hotel itself is mirroring that psychological unraveling.
It's almost like a physical manifestation of Jack's inner demons.
Exactly.
Speaking of Jack.
Yeah.
Nicholson.
Oh, yeah.
What a performance.
Legendary.
Legendary.
Yeah.
Iconic, right? That unsettling grin, the rage in his eyes. You can see him losing his grip on reality.
It's like he's walking this fine line between charisma and madness. And it raises that question. Is it the Overlook that's corrupting Jack? Or is it simply revealing his true nature?
Right.
The source material even digs into this idea that maybe the violence that we see from Jack, particularly towards Danny, might stem from his own past trauma.
Right, his own past.
And it feeds into that cycle of abuse that's so subtly woven into the film's narrative.
Yeah, no, that cyclical nature of that violence is a really key theme here.
Absolutely.
Especially with the film, hinting at Jack's past abuse with Danny, his own, troublesome childhood.
Yeah.
And then there's that final shot of Jack in the 1921 photo, right?
Right.
Almost like suggesting that he's always been a part of this, of the Overlook's dark history.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it? That history just repeats itself, even in a place as isolated as the Overlook.
Yeah, that isolation. And that's a major theme here.
Absolutely.
Right. It's not just the physical isolation of this hotel.
Right.
But that psychological isolation of all these characters.
Yeah.
You see it in Jack's struggles with his writer's block, and Wendy, her isolation as a housewife, and then Danny's, isolation due to The Shining.
Yeah, it's almost like the Overlook itself feeds on that isolation. It amplifies those vulnerabilities.
Right.
It drives them further apart.
And what I found really fascinating was how the source material highlighted The Shining itself.
Right.
It's not just this supernatural ability. It's almost like a metaphor for confronting these buried truths.
Yeah.
However terrifying they may be.
Yeah.
Right. And Danny and Halloran, they can see these horrors.
It can.
Because they have the courage to actually, look beyond the surface.
It's a great observation. You could even argue that the Overlook itself represents those buried truths, the things that we all try to ignore. It forces those characters to confront their deepest fears, their desires, whether it's Jack's repressed rage,
right,
or Wendy's denial of her husband's true nature,
right,
or even Danny's, traumatic experiences.
And we can't forget the role of alcohol in all this.
Right.
Right. Jack's sobriety, it almost seems like a facade.
It does.
Right? Like it's this fragile thing.
Yeah.
And then that ghostly bartender, Lloyd.
Right.
Almost like a manifestation of the Overlook's power.
Right.
Manipulating him.
Yeah. Exploiting that addiction.
Right. To further his downfall.
To break him down. Yeah.
It's like, is the Overlook offering him this twisted escape that ultimately leads to his destruction?
It's a chilling thought. And it speaks to, the insidious nature of addiction itself. And the source material brings up this point that some critics see this as a commentary on kind of the dark side of the American dream.
Okay.
That pursuit of success and how it can lead to self-destruction.
Right.
Especially when it's fueled by things like addiction and denial.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. It's a reminder that the darkness isn't always something external. Sometimes it's lurking within ourselves. And speaking of darkness, one of the really disturbing things about The Shining is its exploration of the subconscious.
Absolutely.
Kubrick, he layers this film with Freudian imagery and symbolism, inviting us to really delve into these characters' minds, to uncover those deepest fears.
Oh, yeah. And it's like the hotel itself becomes this nightmarish landscape where everything's amplified, everything's distorted, and it's terrifying.
And that's the brilliance of this film, right? Kubrick, he never explicitly explains what's real and what's a figment of the character's psyches.
Right.
He leaves it up to us, the audience, to decide. And that's what keeps us talking about this film.
Right, decades later.
Decades later.
And those debates, about what it really means, they're part of its legacy.
Right.
Right. We've touched on the cycles of violence, the American dream, but the source material mentions some really fascinating interpretations.
Oh, yeah.
From commentaries on the Holocaust to explorations of Native American genocide.
Wow.
It's incredible how this one film can be a lens for examining such a wide range of social and historical issues.
It's really a testament to the power of art to spark a conversation, to challenge those assumptions about the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It really is how The Shining manages to be both a deeply personal story about this family's just breakdown, but also a broader commentary on societal issues. And Kubrick achieves this through his mastery of these cinematic techniques. We've talked about that unsettling atmosphere. We've talked about those iconic images, but it's worth really kind of digging deeper into how he creates that visual mastery.
Oh, for sure. It's not just what he's showing us, right?
Wow.
It's how he's showing it. Take, for example, like those incredible Steadicam shots.
Oh, yeah.
Especially the ones where we see, Danny riding his big wheel through the empty hallways. You get this sense of gliding through space, this vast empty space, and it's both mesmerizing and unnerving.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You're right there with him,
Yeah.
experiencing the hotel from his perspective.
Right.
And those long, fluid shots, they create this sense of being watched.
Oh.
Almost like we're on this tour that's guided by, some unseen force.
Right.
It adds to that feeling of unease. It foreshadows, the horrors that are to come.
It's like, the camera itself becomes this character silently observing everything that's happening. And then, there are those low angle shots.
Yes.
Where Kubrick positions the camera, looking up at the characters, and they just seem so small.
Right.
So vulnerable against this backdrop of this imposing structure.
Yeah, it's a subtle technique, but it's so effective at creating this sense of dread,
Right.
highlighting those power dynamics. Like the characters are literally dwarfed by the hotel itself.
Right.
It just reinforces that idea that they're trapped in this place that's beyond their control.
Yeah. The source material also mentions like that contrast between the vibrant, almost garish interiors and that stark cold exterior of the hotel. I mean, the carpets, the wallpaper, that bizarre gold room, it's all so over the top, so unsettling.
It creates this sense of sensory overload, which I think really mirrors what the characters are going through psychologically as well.
Right.
And then you cut to those exterior shots, just surrounded by snow and silence.
Right.
It's such a stark contrast. Like the Overlook is this warm, inviting trap, that hides something icy and sinister beneath the surface.
Yeah, those visual cues definitely play a part in kind of foreshadowing that danger that's lurking within those walls.
Right.
And then, we're going to talk about the editing. It's masterful.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Kubrick uses these abrupt cuts, these jarring transitions that really just mess with your sense of time and reality.
Yeah, it's like he's deliberately trying to disorient you.
Yeah.
To make you feel as unmoored, as uncertain as the characters themselves. I mean, think about that scene where Jack is chopping through the bathroom door.
Oh,
and it just cuts to Danny in the bathtub.
Chilling.
It's so jarring.
Yeah.
You know, it heightens the tension, that sense of impending violence.
Oh, yeah. Those quick cuts, man, they get under your skin.
Yeah.
And they always seem to coincide with these moments of heightened emotion or violence.
Right.
Which just makes them even more effective. And then, you've got those moments where he uses these dissolves or these slow fades.
Yes.
Creating this dreamlike, almost hallucinatory effect.
Right. It's like blurring the lines between reality and Jack's, increasingly fractured mental state.
Right.
Making it hard to even distinguish what's real and what's just a figment of his imagination.
It's like we're losing our grip on reality right alongside them.
Yeah.
We are.
And then, of course, you can't forget about the score.
That haunting, that blend of orchestral and electronic music, it just captures that eerie atmosphere.
So perfectly. So effective at building tension, creating that sense of dread. And you know what else?
What's that?
The way he uses silence is just brilliant.
Yeah.
Those moments of quiet, when the music just drops out, they're often the most terrifying because you're waiting.
You're on edge.
You're waiting for the next horrifying image.
Right.
Or that sound.
It's like the film itself is playing these mind games.
Oh, yeah.
With you. And that's what makes The Shining such a masterclass in psychological horror.
Absolutely.
Right. Kubrick just understands how to manipulate our expectations, how to use sound, silence, the visuals, the pacing to create this truly unsettling experience.
And an unforgettable one.
Unforgettable. And it's resonated with audiences for decades,
It has.
I mean, The Shining, it's one of those films, right? It just gets discussed, gets debated, gets reinterpreted constantly, and it seems like it just grows,
It grows.
In stature, with time. Why do you think that is? What is it about this film that makes it so enduring?
I think it just taps into some very fundamental human fears.
Okay.
Isolation, madness, that breakdown of family, the unknown. And it does all of that in a way that's both, visually stunning, but also psychologically disturbing. I think we can all relate to those feelings of being trapped.
Yeah.
Of feeling like we're losing control. And The Shining just amplifies those fears to this nightmarish degree.
And the fact that Kubrick left so much open to interpretation just adds to that enduring appeal, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a film that invites us to engage with it on multiple levels, to explore those hidden meanings, to draw our own conclusions.
Yeah.
It's not a passive viewing experience.
Yeah.
It's an active one. It requires you to think, to feel.
One thing that really struck me in the source material was just how much discussion there is about the film's portrayal of mental illness and addiction.
Yeah, it's complex.
It's complex, right?
Yeah, it is.
And it doesn't shy away
Right.
from showing those devastating effects of Jack's alcoholism.
Right.
And how it contributes to his unraveling.
Right. You're right. It's not romanticized. It's not glamorized.
Right.
It's the raw, it's the ugly side of it.
Right.
And how it can destroy not just the individual,
right,
but also the people around them.
And while the film doesn't offer these easy answers, right,
Yeah.
or solutions, I mean, it does raise some important questions.
It does.
About the nature of addiction, the role of trauma, the challenges of seeking help.
Yeah, and I think it's a reminder that these issues, they're multifaceted,
right,
and there's no one size fits all approach
to
understanding them, to addressing them.
Yeah.
And it's a testament to the power of this film that it can even spark these kinds of conversations.
It's a film that makes you think. It makes you feel. It makes you question. And I think that's really the mark of a truly great work of art.
I agree.
It's kind of crazy how The Shining has just gone beyond, just horror and become this pop culture thing.
Oh,
even if you haven't seen it, chances are you've seen the images.
Right.
Heard those lines somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, those images of the twins on the hallway, the blood gushing from the elevator.
Right.
Jack Nicholson, that crazed grin peering through the chopped up door.
Right.
They've become, they're part of our visual like vocabulary almost.
It's like they're burned into our memory, and they've been imitated, parodied.
Oh, endlessly.
Endlessly, right. In comedies, cartoons. It just speaks to the power of those visuals, right? To horrify us, but also to just fascinate us.
Absolutely. And then those lines, right?
Yeah.
Like, here's Johnny.
Yeah.
So terrifying in the film.
Right.
But then it becomes a catchphase.
Right.
People use it humorously in completely different settings.
Right. It's so interesting how something so chilling can also become just so normal, so ingrained in our language.
That's true.
The source material even mentions, how The Shining's influence can be seen in other filmmakers' work.
Oh, yeah. It's undeniable. Countless horror films, TV shows have borrowed from it, right? Whether it's the slow burn tension, the psychological chills, the unsettling imagery.
Just The Shining kind of paved the way for this whole new wave of psychological horror.
Yeah, for sure.
But, it's not just horror films, is it?
No. I mean, the themes, right, of isolation, of madness, that dark side of the American dream, it's resonated with filmmakers across genres. I mean, from drama to thrillers, even to comedies.
So The Shining, it's like it's touched so many different parts of our culture.
It really has.
What about music?
Oh, yeah.
I know there's been quite a few musicians that have drawn inspiration.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, across genres from rock, electronic to hip hop, they've sampled the score, they've referenced the imagery.
Right. Yeah.
They've written entire songs based on the themes of this film.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's a testament to how deeply The Shining has just kind of, seeped into our cultural everything.
Yeah, it's become the source of creative inspiration, tapping into those fears, anxieties, the things that we all share.
Yeah.
And we can't forget just the sheer amount of critical analysis that the film has generated.
Oh, yeah. There's a whole world of Shining scholarship out there. Critics, fans, dissecting every frame, analyzing every symbol,
right,
debating the meaning. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing how one film can spark so much discussion, so much analysis. I guess that's the hallmark, right, of a truly great work of art.
It is. And those debates will likely continue for generations to come.
Right.
And that's part of what makes it so fascinating, right? It refuses to give us those easy answers. It challenges us to think, for ourselves,
right,
to come to our own conclusions.
As we wrap up this deep dive into The Shining, I'm curious, what's your biggest takeaway? What really sticks with you?
For me, it's that exploration of the duality of human nature.
Okay.
The way it shows us that even seemingly ordinary people, can be driven to do these really extraordinary, terrifying things.
Right.
When they're faced with the right, or I guess wrong, set of circumstances.
It's a chilling reminder that we all have that darkness within us.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes it takes a little push.
Yeah.
To bring it to the surface.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, what would we do if we were faced with our own, personal overlook?
Right.
What demons would we confront?
Right.
What choices would we make?
Those are some deep questions, to think about. But I think that's the beauty of The Shining. It forces us to confront those truths, those uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about the world. It challenges us to look beyond, the surface.
Yeah.
To acknowledge that darkness that's there within us all.
Well said. And on that note, on that thought-provoking note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into The Shining. I mean, we've explored it all: the plot, the characters, the themes, the visuals, the impact it's had, the interpretations.
Yeah.
It's been quite a journey.
And as we leave this world behind, right, this chilling world of the Overlook, I think we're left with this sense of awe, but also unease. A reminder that darkness, it's always there, just lurking beneath the surface.
It is. So to our listeners out there, if you haven't already, experienced The Shining, it's a film that will stick with you, and a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things can also be the most terrifying.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of film.